Ty West and Mia Goth team up to bring us two of the most interesting horror movies of 2022. No doubt about that. Let's talk about X and Pearl. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my mostly spoiler-free review for the new movies X and Pearl. I say mostly spoiler-free because I'm going to try very, very hard not to give plot specifics. However, Pearl, the second movie to be released, is a prequel and takes place before the events in X. So there is a slight chance that we may talk a little bit of spoilers in X, but I think we can stay away from avoiding, major things here in these films and still be able to talk about both of them in true fashion. So, like I mentioned, these both came out in 2022. They were actually shot together simultaneously, and X came out a few months ago. It is now streaming on Showtime. It may be available for on-demand as well, and then Pearl is still in select theaters, but I believe come sometime in November, that will be available for on-demand as well. But I figured, you know what, we're in the Halloween season. This movie, Pearl, is still in theaters a little bit, so time to kind of knock some of these horror reviews out, right? So I'm not sure if there's a correct order to watch these in. I went with the order they were released in because I feel like that's usually the way to do things. It's usually the way the studio wants you to watch them and that the creators want you to watch them. So I watched X first, and then I saw Pearl afterwards, and I think that is probably a good way to do it. So Ty West is the director of both of these films, co-writer of Pearl, but he wrote X all by himself. And he has written and directed a lot of horror films that I have not really seen, but real genre films, including The Innkeepers, The House of the Dead. And then Mia Goth co-wrote. She stars in both of these movies, but she co-wrote Pearl. She only acts in X. She did not have a co-writing credit in that. But she has, been a part of a lot of, different pictures, not just horror films. She was in The Cure for Wellness, which was certainly a psychological thriller, if anything else. But she was also in the period comedy Emma, which, happened in 2020. It kind of got shuffled aside because it came out like right as the pandemic hit. But yeah, so she's been around a few different genres, but I don't know. I feel like horror may be where she shines the most after seeing these movies. So, unlike a lot of my sort of double reviews where, I talk about one movie, grade it, and then we move on to the next. These are just so intertwined. Like I said, they were filmed at the same time. So I think I'm going to sort of just jump around a bit with both of them and talk about both of them together and then wait till the end for my grades on both of the films. So, anyway, like I said, I'm kind of unfamiliar with the work of Ty West. I didn't look through his whole filmography, but I think, these might be among the first movies I've seen of his. So, the basic premise, I guess we can talk about that quickly without getting into spoiler territory. So, X takes place in the 70s, and it is essentially an amalgamation of two separate genres of film, but both sort of on the fringe of things in the 70s. The movie is called X partially because, back in the day, the X rating was a big thing for movies that today would probably be considered NC-17 or maybe like a hard R, but movies like A Clockwork Orange and Midnight Cowboy and stuff. But the two genres the most that got that X rating were horror movies of the day and as well softcore pornography movies. They didn't quite get a triple X, but they got an X. And so this movie sort of takes both of those genres because this takes place in the late 70s, and Maxine Minx, who is played by Mia Goth, falls into this group. Her boyfriend is a producer named Wayne, and they decide to shoot an adult film because, at that point in time, the porn houses were popping up all over the country. This is sort of before, the advent of at-home porn with VHS tapes and stuff. But anyway, they go to this farm of Howard and Pearl, who are an elderly couple, and they're going to film in their guest house. Pearl is played as well by Mia Goth. So she's pulling double duty here in this movie. And so the first like half of this movie is kind of leaning into the pornography, the pornography filming style of the time and that sort of thing, and some of the things that you associate with that. Yes, there's some harder core sex scenes in the first half of this movie, but just the way it's shot as well by Ty West, very sort of, grainy, a little bit low budget for sure. And so we get that, and it's, it's on the edge maybe of satirical, but not in a joking manner, more of homage. And then in the second half, it turns into basically like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I don't want to say remake, but yeah, definitely an homage to that and other slasher films and sort of B horror movies of that era. So you kind of have two different genres coming together, both though that really the X rating was a hallmark for in the late 70s. Okay, so then you have Pearl, which is, like I said, a prequel. Mia Goth now plays the Pearl character as a young woman. This takes place in, I don't know the exact year, but it's like right around World War I, early 1920s, that kind of thing. And she has these strong aspirations of breaking into the film industry, into Hollywood, into acting. Of course, at that point, is silent movies, but she, falls for this projector runner guy at the local theater. And, he entices her, oh, hey, come in after school and you can get a free sample of this movie here we're going to show, and whatever. And she sort of not only falls for him, but falls more in love, I think, with the whole idea of that thing. And like how X is sort of an homage, or I don't want to say parody or satire, because I don't think that's quite correct. So let's stick with homage, but to the X-rated horror and adult films of that day, we see tons in Pearl of Oz references, Oz parallels, and Wizard of Oz, my favorite movie of all time, so I picked up on so many of them. But there is a sex scene with a scarecrow. There is her outfit, which is just right out of the Dorothy playbook. And then there's just the whole idea in general of her wanting to leave her farmhouse family for something better, some greener pastures. And so it works in that way. So, not to get into too many specifics about what the Pearl character is all about, I guess, because then we do, I think, get into some spoiler territory for X. But if you look at the poster where Pearl has a big axe for the Pearl poster, all right, you can maybe see where this is going. So both of these movies are fiendishly creative. I would say original, and they are that. In terms of what we see in 2022, but they are certainly, taking their cues and inspiration from some of the other great things in Hollywood history. So, maybe original is not the right word, but I think for a horror movie in 2022, I do think it's original in that regard. And certainly creative in the way that they're shot and the way that we sort of are looking at these characters. And I think the characters themselves have some different layers. Certainly, the Pearl character in the movie Pearl is very, very layered. And we see a lot of things that we can maybe empathize with and other things that we are certainly, at least I was horrified about, and I'm not sure that we ever fully are supposed to embrace and love this Pearl character, but I think in some aspects we do certainly feel for her plight, and maybe not getting the part she wanted, and maybe there's some mental issues there too. I would say stronger than maybe there definitely are. But yeah, I think Mia Goth is just, no pun intended, but she is killing these roles. I mean, she is so amazing. Now, I will say, one of the downfalls of X is that the makeup that they put on her for the Pearl character is fairly obvious, fairly low budget. But again, I think that was a conscious choice to sort of emulate those lower budget B horrors of the day. So I don't think that, I mean, it's a little bit of a detriment when you're watching it, but I do think it was a conscious choice. I think Ty West knows that the makeup is not the best looking for her as that character. But we do get some interesting character conversations throughout X. Certainly the first hour before the killings begin. And I think we get probably even more character development because there's a smaller group of people in the Pearl movie. So I think these are both really, really inventive horror movies, among the best of the year. I think so far my favorites of this year have been The Black Phone, and I also really enjoyed the Scream redo. But I think these are right alongside with them. It's funny because this is one of those great debates, like, there's certain sequels where it's like, oh, Godfather or Godfather 2, which one do you like better? I think there's a lot of internet buzz this summer about which is better, X or Pearl. Critically, it looks like it's X. But for this critic, and I don't even think this is because of my Oz love and all the references there, I just think that Pearl is a much more fascinating story and less, I guess, a little bit derivative. Because, X really does basically give us the story of, like, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or some of those movies. While Pearl sort of straddles this line of, like, here's a bunch of Oz references, we're clearly, inspired by that story, but there's no way you would say, oh, that's Oz at all. So for that, I definitely give Pearl the edge. But really, I thought both of these movies were very, very well done. I'm going to leave X with a B. A B plus for X. And again, you can look at that on demand right now on Showtime and possibly some other outlets. And then I will leave Pearl with an A minus. And we're getting really into the spooky season here. In the next week or week and a half or so, I'm going to have reviews of Smile, which is currently #1 at the box office, Halloween Ends, which is the new Halloween movie, and there's a bunch of streaming horror movies as well that I think I'll kind of put into maybe one review and just tackle 3 or 4 of them at once. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time on Dan Reviews It. Bye.